Welcome, listeners. Oh my gosh, we have a special guest for you today. Listeners, we are living in a time of great change. And when you think about the media influences that are going on and how they are pulling us into this social and this political change, well, suffice it to say that we are only becoming more mindful in terms of how we consume media today. And within that whole media entertainment industry and the social change that's happening within it and how it impacts our lives, we have the hashtag #MeToo movement. We have calls for equity and parity in pay and opportunity, and the ability for women writers and writers of color and directors of color, everybody, to have a shot at being able to create at the highest possible platform and for the most appropriate pay. So all of this information about how money flows in TV business is fascinating. I'm always interested to find out how much is known about who makes decisions and why, sadly, some of the most talented, smart people choose to leave TV. And daytime dramas are a huge element of women's TV. We would be remiss if we didn't admit that daytime dramas were marketed toward women, that they were focused on women and women's issues. And some of the smartest writers came out of women's TV, some of the best performers. So I am thrilled today to have a special guest, Cady McClain, who will talk to us and offer us her insights into the life that she led in front of the camera and her new life behind it. Welcome, Cady McClain.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are awesome. You are awesome. I've read your book, your memoir. We're going to talk a bit about your memoir. We are also going to talk more specifically about this project that you've been a part of now for a couple of years and continues to only hold steam and value and relevance. And it's called Seeing is Believing, Women Direct. Listeners, you're going to hear that about 100 times because I'm so proud of this movement that Cady is a part of. And it's similar to some of the other conversations we've had about women in Hollywood and the work that they do and the Gina Davis Institute and what they do. But Cady is right in the middle of it all. And this work that she's done, her hands and her head and her heart, it is all kind of a full capture of her life. But listeners, because you can't see us, and we aren't even seeing each other in this remote venue, you will most likely recognize Cady's voice as Dixie Cooney from All My Children and as The World Turns. You're in for a treat. So Cady McClain, let's talk TV.
Okay, let's do it.
If I can ask, where are you talking to us from right now? You're in the Pacific time zone. That's all I know.
That's right. I live in Los Angeles, in the city of Los Angeles, and we have a little house here, and I have a little office in this little house, and I'm sitting at my desk. It's a bright yellow desk, which I love, and I got all dressed. I have my makeup on and my shoes on, and I kind of have taken this tack that it's really important to continue to treat your life as if you are continuing forward with your professional life, because no matter what, we must continue forward, whatever is going on from wherever we work and however we work.
Yes.
So I'm all here.
Listeners, we're recording this on March 24th and hope to produce it and publish it just a few days after this. So this is the first episode of Advanced TV Herstory that has been convened under self-isolation, under shelter in place. And you know what? It's a different way of looking at things, and the world is certainly going to change. But we have this opportunity to learn from the past. And what Cady isn't probably telling you, and I have no actual verification, but somewhere in her world are her 2 Emmys that she earned, and all of the goodwill from the Emmy nominations that reflects her work that took place in front of the camera, her life in front of the camera. So Cady, give us the short story of your work that started in commercials and your work in made-for-TVs and how that landed you into daytime.
Sure. I was born in Los Angeles. I got into show business when I was 9. Neither of my parents were in show business. I wanted to do commercials, partly to help my family that was always financially struggling, but partly because I really loved the world inside the television. In the 80s, everything was sunny and bright and happy, and the big Kool-Aid man busting through walls, and it just looked like a beautiful place to be, and like a lot of fun. And my mom got behind that idea and sent out my headshots randomly to agents. It's definitely easier to get work as a child. So I was lucky. I got an agent, and a very good one. And she sent me out to a lot of auditions, and I worked a lot as a kid, and did things like Cheers. You might remember that show. Saint Elsewhere, which was a very popular show at the time. Some big studio movies. One was called My Favorite Year with Peter O'Toole, Pennies from Heaven with Steve Martin and Bernadette Peters. And by the time I was 16, I started to notice that the kind of attention I was getting from men was not something that I really had the internal skills to handle. I knew that if I stayed in Los Angeles, that I was going to get eaten alive. And very fortunately, I got a play that did a workshop in Los Angeles and then moved to New York to do a pre-trial Broadway run in East Hampton, Long Island. And so I kind of begged my mom to move us to New York. New York felt safer. It's sort of like one of those feelings of safer in a crowd. There's just too many people. It's not all show business. Los Angeles is very, very focused on show business. Most people here are somehow or other in the business or doing something that's somewhat related to the business. So I could get lost in other industries in New York and sort of find myself. I was very young. I didn't really know who I was. I just kind of enjoyed acting. And so she agreed, God bless her. And we moved to New York when I was 17. And unfortunately, I learned that there are sharks on the pavements as well. But it was good for me. I got tough, and I learned a lot about how to stand up for myself. And I got all my children. Now, part of the reason I got all my children or went for soap operas is my mother got cancer when I was 17, very, very shortly. Like, she had her first sort of lump. But then when I was 18, it kind of developed, and she had a full double mastectomy. And I said, Mom, I'm going to take care of you. I'll figure it out. My dad wasn't around. He hadn't been around in a long time. So I told my agent to send me out on soap opera auditions because I knew that was the steadiest work in town. You would get these long contracts and you would work every week. Usually an actor's life is you work pretty randomly. If you work once a month, that's amazing. You tend to work every few months, and all your other work is sort of prepping for that moment when you do get a chance to get a movie or an episode of television or a series if you're really lucky. Yeah, so I auditioned for a few soap operas, one of which was Guiding Light, where I totally blanked on my lines in the screen test, and I couldn't even, my sweat was running down my back. I was terrified. But then I auditioned for Loving. I didn't get it. But then I got all my children.
Very frap, or a lemon sherbety.
Well, wouldn't you like to buy us some food?
To where? Myrtle, how kinky. But it does have possibility.
Oh, you're a bad boy.
No, seriously, Myrtle, this woman is 1 in a million. And I tell you something, I really think that I would never be able to do her justice in clothes. So I tell you, I'm just going to pack it in for now and rethink the whole thing, okay? Thanks anyway. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Heaven help me, I've just forgotten every woman I've ever met. Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine, I guess.
Are you sure? You seem a little wobbly.
Oh, no, I guess I'm fine.
I wouldn't mind catching you again.
No, I'm perfectly all right.
No, you can't be sure. You better take it easy. I'm serious. I could have stepped on something or broken a bone. Here, sit down. As a matter of fact, my father is a doctor, and personally, I wouldn't mind examining you.
Tad, do you never stop? Huh?
Not till I die.
I don't believe I need a body check just now, Tad.
Then you remember me?
Yeah, I think I've seen you enough time at Nico's.
Hear that, Myrtle? Unforgettable as well as incredibly charming.
And totally wicked.
And a delight to be with. As a matter of fact, the answer to a woman's prayers.
Lord knows which woman.
Tad, this young lady has come to pick up a dress for tonight's party, right?
Yes. Is it ready?
I think it is. I'll go check.
Who can forget the glory days of All My Children? Michael Knight as Tad Martin, and sweet Myrtle Fargate in all her carny stories, played by the late Eileen Hurley.
it was great. I was just turned 19 when I started that job. And yeah, for sure. I mean, it was the late 80s. It was a totally different time. I mean, all I was aware of was that it was steady employment. I didn't have that kind of insight into, at that time, where it stood in the greater scheme of things. It was a good show. It was a respected show. There were good actors on it, and it was known for having good actors. And my job for the first few years was just to keep my job. That was it. I had to give my absolute best all the time to keep that job so that I could take care of my mom. But also, I felt that if I didn't do well at that job, then I probably wasn't really an actor, and I should look at doing something else. Fortunately, or however it worked out, the effort paid off, and I won an Emmy in 1990, and that was about a year and a half into it. And I'm very proud of that. It was a very hard one.
Now, Cady mentioned a talented All My Children cast that regularly took home Emmy trophies. Well, everyone except Susan Lucci all those years. If you're curious about the hair or the evolution of major characters like Dixie Cooney, head right over to YouTube. My goodness, fans keep these performances alive. It's kind of fun to just spend a half an hour watching old soaps. In fact, there's a 25-minute long highlight reel of Cady's work just from 1990. These little inserts on ABC Daytime back in the day were a bit shorter.
Stop the presses.
Congratulations to Julia Barr,
This has got to be one for the books.
winner of the Daytime Emmy Award for Best Supporting Actress in a Drama Series, as Brooke English on All My Children.
That's such good news. I'm so excited. I feel fantastic. I feel liberated. It's great.
And congratulations to Cady McClain, winner of the Daytime Emmy Award for Best Juvenile Female, as Dixie Martin on All My Children.
Oh, well, you shouldn't have.
As it continued on, I began to see the politics at play, and there were definitely rules to the game. You know, one of the rules which I began to break later on was you never tell the emperor that he has no clothes on. You know, it's yes or no, sir, and you take your you don't have a voice, basically. You know, you take your notes and you say thank you very much, and you show up and you know your lines and you're a professional. I mean, that's really your job as the actor, is to not be the producer. You're not the writer. You're not the director. You can occasionally, like working with Michael Knight was great because Michael Knight had a little bit more power. He had a kind of star shine on him that made the network kind of sit up and pay attention. Because I got to work with him, I got to kind of be around that and notice that. And it was very funny, is even though we were a couple, the kind of attention or you know support that was given to him was not given to me. And I found that across the board. And very, very rarely are women given, even in daytime, which was supposedly a women's medium. You know, the men still tend to be, I don't know why, you know, taken care of, I would say, you know, by the networks a little bit better. And with some exception, you know, I mean, there's certainly the Susan Lucci or the Michelle Stafford, you know, are really stepped up and said, no. I don't think so. I think I earned my place here. But they have a very specific kind of personality. It's very, very tough, and they demand respect. So good for them.
Would you say that some of that was so if Michael Knight was sort of treated differently on the backside, how were you both received, or how were you individually received by the fans and the sort of promotional things that you had to do out in the public?
Well, it's kind of funny. The soaps were known as romances, right? They're sort of like a daytime romance. And so they used to think that the audience was mostly women. And so, of course, the women really, really want to see the men. You know, it's sort of like the peacock and the brown bird. You know, Mike was the peacock, I was the brown bird. And yet, you know, there is no one kind of without the other. You know, the comedian has to have the straight man, you know. And so we were a great match in that way. We both understood timing. We both understood drama. We both respected each other. And so that was a lovely relationship for a few years.
Dix? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you.
No, you didn't. I'm fine.
Listen, did anybody call to come by looking for Brooke?
Well, no, there were no calls, but Edmund came by asking to see her. I told him that she was sick and couldn't have any visitors.
Did he buy it?
No. He went over to grill Dimitri.
Well, okay, fine. I'll just have to catch up with him as soon as I can.
Are you going to tell him?
Yeah, Edmund's trustworthy.
You want a soda?
Oh, no, thanks.
Tired?
I'm beat. And I'm not half finished with what I've got to do.
I hate to ask this.
What?
What happens if the law finds out what you're doing?
Dixie, I'm aiding and abetting a fugitive. If the law finds out what I'm doing, I'm going to jail.
You're going to jail? That can't happen, Ted. Not to you.
That was from 1998, 8 years after Cady earned her first Emmy. Yet, paired with Michael Knight as Tad, she was often the reactive one. We may not have noticed this quite as much back then.
And, I didn't mind, I never really wanted to be a star. It was something I just didn't feel, I didn't want that attention. I didn't need that attention. I wasn't interested in that attention. I was interested in doing great work. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be in the theater. My heroes all came off of, like the National Theater, or the Royal Shakespeare Company. And, there were people that disappeared into roles. And, that was kind of more my goal. And so it was just sort of interesting to observe, there's a difference between people who want to be stars or celebrities like today. We see people who just want to be popular. Or people who are kind of more focused on the craft of something and want to make things. I'm just a want to make things kind of person.
Did it take you that long? Did you always know that, or did it sort of take you all those years in daytime to sort of suss that out of your own soul and where you thought your strengths were?
Well, I think I saw as a child actor the cost of being famous. So I saw very young that when I was a little kid, I was like, look at me, I was a tap dancer. I like to sell things in front of the supermarket, I could be a show off. But as I continued through the industry, I saw that the more famous you were, the more people grabbed at you and the more people tried to manipulate and control you. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the business of the business in that regard. Mm-hmm. And so to me, in a weird way, the attention was like a means to an end. I had to have a certain amount of it so that I could get my paycheck up or I could get the storyline that I wanted. But it was much more of a means to an end. And kind of like the older I got, the more that kind of wore thin. Because, I saw that even people who were very successful, they found it sometimes a very empty, again, it's just an empty game.
And all that glitters is not gold. Listeners will recognize that now it's a year ago we published a 5-episode series on the Judy Garland Show, 1963 and 1964, and the 26 episodes, and talked somewhat about the tremendous strain that the business put on a very talented individual. And it was a good conversation topic that how particularly women are fed off of. I don't think we can have that conversation enough because it's the only way that women are going to begin defending and celebrating the work that women are then doing away from that power metric. We have to enable people to be okay with finding their entertainment in places other than that which is generated by the Woody Allens and the Harvey Weinsteins of the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And here's a sort of fascinating thing. Is that, the narratives that were sold on daytime television were sort of part and parcel of, a narrative that is one that is actually limiting to women and what they are actually capable of. I mean, even when you have a character that's a woman and she's a businesswoman, she's still dealing with, the focus of her life being whether or not she's married or her romantic life.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I always said is like, where are her friends?
Yeah, there weren't too many buddies.
Yeah. You rarely had a woman talking to another woman about something other than a man. It just didn't pass the Bechdel test.
Mm-hmm.
Cady made an excellent point, and we will hear more about that in a future interview with soap opera expert, author, and professor Dr. Alana Levine. Scenes, storyline, and dialogue invariably come back to the male as the active one, the decisive one, or the overall focus of a scene or an arc. All My Children, however, got it right every once in a while, bless their souls, and sadly, it was in the funeral of Mona Cain. Mona, as you may recall, was played by Frances Heflin, who passed away from lung cancer in 1994. They actually wrote the lung cancer into Mona's character, thereby creating a storyline of compassion and reality for which All My Children really was known. An August 1994 episode focused entirely on Mona Cain. These remarks from Mona's frequent adversary, many catfights between Mona and Ruth Martin, played by castmate Mary Fickett. 24 years together on the show. Listen closely. This is TV Herstory.
The last time I saw Mona was at the hospital. A patient that I had grown quite fond of had just passed away, and I wasn't in a very good mood. Mona was on her way home, and I'm afraid I was kind of short with her. She had worked a very hard, long day, and she had every right to go home. She didn't need me being rude to her. But that wasn't Mona. No, Mona stopped me, and she sat me down. She made me tell her what was wrong. We must have sat there for over 2 hours, and she just listened while I went on and on and on. Such patience, you know. A benefit at the hospital. Mona was always the first to volunteer. You never even had to ask her. She would just type up her list of volunteers, and at the very end of the page, she would quietly add her name. She never seemed to want to take credit for anything. She seemed happier just being in the background, you know. She was a true unsung heroine. When I think of Mona, I think of her as a single working parent at a time when women such as herself were looked down upon or completely ignored. I mean, I don't really understand how she did it, how she managed. I mean, she triumphed. She held down a steady job. She raised Erica. She was a wonderful role model for Erica and for Bianca. And I'm going to miss her more than I can say.
Listeners, there's more from Cady McClain in part 2 of this extended interview. It's been a fascinating way to set the stage for an upcoming 4-episode series with Dr. Alana Levine for a deep look at how daytime drama changed TV through its storytelling techniques, how it made money, and how it approached social issues. More often than you'd expect, daytime drama was leading what was going on and what was changing in TV. Learn more about Cady McClain and her projects at her website, CadyMcClain.com. Follow her on Twitter and Instagram, CadyMcClain. In the second half of our chat, we talk about Cady's independent film called Seeing is Believing, Women Direct, and how she chose to realize her talents as a storyteller and her passion as an advocate. Listeners, Advanced TV Herstory is all about TV women and the impressions they bring us in front of the camera and behind it. With more than 100 episodes in the archives, You gotta believe there's something for everyone. Find those archives and our social media handles and all sorts of background information about TV Herstory at our website, tvherstory.com. And while you're there, sign up for our e-newsletter. Rest assured your email remains safe with us. If you like what you hear and you think that this might be the right show to share with someone you know who is new to podcast listening, help them by pulling up YouTube and going to the Advanced TV Herstory channel and just press play. Also find us at Spotify and Pandora and anywhere podcasts are found. Excerpts from All My Children and the ABC commercial clips are found on YouTube. This podcast music is Jazzer's Take Me Higher and is found at Free Music Archive. Many thanks to Catherine Yang for waving pixie dust over audio files, thereby bringing pleasure to your ears. We love our work, and you are why we podcast. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams.